We give our gratitude, our love, and our thanks for this opportunity to share this sacred space together as we honor those massacred, killed in the genocide that happened on this land, and especially giving our honor to those at Sand Creek. So now,
mentor, friend, Professor Ned Blackwell. Commemorating the 150th anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre, which occurred 150 years ago last Saturday, on November 29th, 1864, when a heavily armed militia of over 700 Colorado and New Mexican volunteer soldiers and cavalry officers attacked a peaceful band of Cheyenne and Arapaho villagers alongside the Sand Creek, about 45 miles northeast of what was then a major fort in the area called Fort Lyon, Colorado, in the southeast corner of the state. This massacre, like many, has gone uncommemorated nationally, and we may be the only gathered group east of the Mississippi devoting a considerable moment of the time and attention to the subject. I was involved in a series of academic and institutional inquiries on this subject, trying to assess the relative culpability of the then Colorado Governor, John Evans, in this massacre. As Colorado Territorial Governor, Evans held the dual appointment of territorial leader for the non-native settlers of the state, as well as the superintendent of Indian affairs for the region. And Evans pursued a series of ultimately miserable strategies for Plains Indian communities that culminated that fateful morning on November 29th. Evans happened to have founded two academic institutions prior to the Sand Creek Massacre at the University of Denver, and previously, based on his ties with previously in the state of Illinois, where the town of Evanston, Illinois is named in his honor. He happened not to be in the state at the time, but had organized the call for the militia, had rebuffed peace initiatives from the Cheyenne leaders that summer at a camp at a place called Fort Weld, and had helped incite a kind of pathological anti-Indian sentiment across the state. That's the kind of findings that this committee I was on conducted. And I've been kind of shocked that we are living through the sesquicentennial of the American Civil War era, and there has yet to be any national commemorative conversations about not just this moment of brutality against Native peoples, but a whole series of some of the darkest chapters in American Indian history that really began in the summer of 1862 in the Dakota Territories, when Dakota warriors erupted in a campaign of even greater actual violence than the Colorado Indian Wars that led to the largest mass execution in U.S. history at Mankato in December of 1862. It was followed literally weeks later by a massacre of northwestern Shoshones at the Bear River, northeast of Salt Lake City, which scholars debate the total number of casualties that day and fatalities, but anywhere between 300 to 500 northwestern Shoshone villagers were murdered that morning by then Colonel Patrick Edward Connor of the California Cavalry Volunteer Officer Corps stationed at Salt Lake City, where a plaque on the University of Utah campus still commemorates his leadership of what was then known as Fort Douglas, part of the Salt Lake City University of Utah still campus to this day. So institutionally and nationally, we as a nation and as sometimes academic leaders have yet to really grapple with the legacies of these moments. And the Sand Creek atrocities are so horrific, partly because they were publicized by other cavalry officers, that they include scenes of brutality that are unmatched in the history of North America. And it's almost not, it's almost not our place to really describe in detail the nature of those atrocities. But they involve the removal of children from pregnant women's bodies, the scalping of unborn infants and elderly, repeated atrocities committed against Cheyenne and Arapaho bodies throughout the morning of the attack itself, into the day, throughout the evening, and then resuming the next morning when some victims were scalped 4 to 5 times. Those scenes kind of filtered throughout parts of the American media at the time and led to the castigation of Evans and the cavalry officer at the time, John Shivington, both of whom lost their appointments, but neither of whom was criminally prosecuted, nor have there been really wide-scale assessments or recognitions in the state of Colorado of the essentially ethnic cleansing of equestrian Indians across the state. There are no federally recognized tribes in Colorado east of the Rocky Mountains, and within a 20-year period, basically, an entirely indigenous world became heavily colonized and resettled. So we're here today to honor and commemorate those lost and perhaps call for something larger, and that's something I've been partly involved in the last few weeks, publicizing various commemorative efforts to draw attention to this terrible, tragic moment in American history, and perhaps ask ourselves collectively in some capacity whether we might think of an actual day of remembrance for indigenous peoples, perhaps a day of indigenous remembrance as well as survival, recognizing that these settler state processes of violence and colonial governance that targeted the lives of Native peoples throughout American history, these processes are still ongoing. There's profound asymmetries in life expectancy, infant mortality, education attainment, faculty hiring and promotion in the academic institutions. Profound asymmetries between Native and non-Native peoples, and this country may not have yet really fully recognized the extent to which these violent chapters in our past are still with us today. So thank you all for coming. We stand in solidarity as well with the Native American community members, and particularly Colorado and the city of Denver, who recently concluded about a week of memorial activities that included a sacred run from the site of Sand Creek itself back to Denver, the original starting point for the cavalry forces that attacked Black Kettle Cheyenne band that faithful. So thank you very much.
Next we're gonna have. So this piece that I want to present is one that I wrote a while back. That is, it remembers the genocide that Navajo people went through and came out of, and how that still affects us today. And I want to offer that for this moment right now. Shinasha, 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 Hawe, Hoshon, Haweya, Heya. My best friend's mother sang this song to him as a baby, as it was sung to her by her mother, originally by her great-grandmother, as she walked home from a place whose name means wind, because to the wind was where they wanted us to go. Generations ago, my tribe walked past traditional boundaries onto uncharted land, forced marched to the edge of sanity, past the borders of exhaustion, and pressed to the limit of a limitless potential of people. This song was sung. Shinasha. My best friend's mother sang this song to him as a baby. She told me that some nights she would sneak into his room as he slept and whisper the song into his ears because it was the only bit of culture she knew, and she didn't want her memories lost on the wind like countless lives before hers. But the wind that took half of the fourth generation curved towards her song, as if with a vengeful grasp of Fort Sumner, coming to collect all the souls that had left its angry clutches. Huelde was a robbing cyclone within her oxygen mask. She breathed in and out, releasing a little bit more of herself with every lowered stomach. And her son never left. He held on to his mother's hand, trying to get her to hold on for just one last breath, so he sang. And I imagine she heard her culture. realized that her tribe wasn't as lost as it seemed, and that her son held on to his identity because she passed a smile on her face. So today, he sits by her headstone, motherless. He uses the best memory he has and sings. The ghosts of his foremothers edge around his heart, crying tears of pride as the hands of history tap their rhythm on his shoulders. His mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother watch. They no longer whisper themselves into his broken ears, but as he whispers into theirs, into hers. Mother Earth listens patiently to the sound of 4 generations smiling. She knows that all is not lost but found within this song. Shinasha, 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 away, Oshona, Neya.
I believe that art, poetry, and emotion are also important to keep in context when we talk about these events. So, all along the creek bank they crouched holding the children until the last warrior was dead, and the soldiers turned slowly towards them like men in bad dreams. The old women knew what was coming. All along the creek bank, they tore off their shawls, their shirts, their scarves, anything close at hand, and they covered the eyes of the children. The old woman knew that if young children saw what men in a bad dream could do, they would not die a clean death. So they covered the eyes of the children and made no more roofs to run. The old woman knew it was time. All along the creek bank they sat with their eyes wide open, watching and rocking the swaddled children. And when the soldiers opened fire, they tumbled into the creek, the dead children in their arms with eyes covered so they would not see what men in a bad dream could do. All along the creek bank, the old woman knew how to move from one dream to another and take the children safely through. The old woman knew what men in a bad dream could do.